Today we will be working on something that's rather difficult. It has to do with the nose, the lips, the chin, a little bit of the neck. So pretty much looking at the lower half of the face. You can see I have my picture posted right next to where I'm working, and do you want to work at the same size, same scale as the reference photo? That means you can actually measure and transfer, so the nose on the reference photo is the same size as the nose on the paper. So you can use that measuring technique. You do want to take some time to pencil everything out so that you have not just the features themselves, but you're also outlining the shadow areas. It's also important to note that you're not drawing the sides of the nose, you're drawing the bottom and the top. You don't draw the sides of the nose because, first of all, you don't want it to look like two parallel lines. And second of all, it's because you don't need a line for that middle section of the nose. You would rather paint that using shading, so using a gradient. Like with pretty much everything we've done so far, I think it's important that we start with the shading. So there is a cast shadow underneath the nose. The nostrils have a darkness to them because they're essentially like a cave. And you're going to look for those shadow areas. It is a good idea to double check your value and your temperature by using one of those scrap papers and holding it up to your reference to make sure it's correct. Here I'm going to the lips. So there is a distinctive line that separates the top lip from the bottom lip, and it's kind of a darker one. It's okay to not have every value at first, so on a first layer, as long as you go back in and get a second coat on there and you get more variation and you try and be more accurate with your values and color matching on that second coat. So there is a shadow on this figure where there's a cast shadow from the upper lip onto the bottom lip, and it's a very curvy shadow. It's mimicking the curve of the upper lip. Now I did do a little bit of work around the eyes, but I left the eyes blank. It is up to you if you wanted to paint the eyes. I do think it's good practice for you to do the skin around the eyes. There are some predictable shadows around the face. One of those is underneath the nose because the nose actually blocks the light. Also, the top lip is almost always a degree darker than the bottom. And then there's this little shadow that happens right below the lower lip, the bottom lip there. And it's because the chin starts to curve out there. So for a second, the chin goes into darkness and then it becomes lighter again. You have to think in terms of sculptural kind of elements, that the face is round. Now on my model, there was a shadow underneath the chin, or on the chin and jawline. At first, it will look like I'm painting a beard on this person, but I'm going to gradiate that in. You may have this on your model, or you may not, so you always have to pay attention to where the shadows are. Keep thinking about wrapping your stroke around the form. So on that chin, I'm curving around kind of like in an oval kind of curve as I'm wrapping it around the face. The lower half of the face is called a muzzle. So it's kind of like what you call a dog's face, but we call it the muzzle, and it's almost like a donut. So it's going to be round right around the lips, and then it has areas where it kind of sinks in. There are some shadows that are occurring around the eye socket. I'd like you to try and get those too. You don't necessarily have to paint the upper eyelid if you wanted to, but you could. So usually in the eye sockets, you're going to have some shadow, but it can depend on the lighting situation. So this model was photographed in natural lighting, but it's kind of at an angle. So the sun was partway down in the sky. Which means that there's going to be some significant shadows, which is why she's got that kind of like beard thing going on. On the chin, you want to tell yourself that that's kind of like painting a semi-sphere, almost like an egg-shaped sphere, so your strokes are going to wrap around there too. This is where I'm starting to gradiate, so I'm going from that kind of purpley brown to a warmer brown. It's not a perfect gradation yet, but it will get there. Remember that skin tone is most easily made by using burnt sienna, white, and then starting to add some other colors to it. I typically take burnt sienna, white, and then I'll start to add the primaries to it. And it's all about ratio and proportion when you're mixing skin tone. So you could add a little bit of blue or yellow or red, and then add white to it to get it to go lighter. You always want to ask yourself if the skin tone is cool in a certain place or is it warm. So think about temperature. Because on this person's face, there are areas where the skin tone turned very cool, like kind of a purpley brown, and then there are other areas where the skin tone would turn warmer and yellower. The side of the nose, the bridge of the nose there, it's important that you angle your strokes, kind of like an upside down V, like you're painting a mountain, but without a point, without a peak. You've got to try and suggest that form, that 3D volume to that face. I always feel like my paintings get better with the second layer, so it's going to look a little rough and patchy at first, but then by layer 2, it's going to start to smooth out, and I can work a little bit more on getting the gradients to look good. And by now you've already figured that gradients are really key to making a painting successful and how smooth those shifts can be. And there are gradients everywhere in the real world. You just have to be open to seeing them. Note that in between the two eyebrows, the skin changed and it got a little bit darker there because it's kind of an indent. Now I'm going to turn it over to you and let you continue with painting the nose, the upper lip, lower lip, chin.